with fantasy football season on its way, here's the top 40 running backs I'm ranking before your fantasy drafts in the next couple weeks. So you've seen on the channel, if you're watching it, I've done mock drafts and breakdowns from the first pick to the 12th pick. And now here's running back rankings, the top 40. Number one, Saquon Barkley have this year, coming off 2,000 yards last season. I don't expect him to get 2,000 once again. And I know Bijan Robinson on some platforms, he's going as the number one back overall. But after the season we saw last year, Saquon Barkley put up, even though I know he's going to get vultured at the goal line at times with the push. He's just a great running back. Obviously, is Saquon Barkley, and I have confidence once again take him as the number one running back. You have the argument all three of these guys could be the number one back in Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs. Bijan, another good season it was in his second year last year. He was the workhorse there. Tyler Algier didn't eat into his workload, and he's one of the better receiving backs in the league. So I think Bijan Robinson with more security than Jahmyr Gibbs. That's why I have him at 2. Number 3, Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs last season, monster second year was from him, making a lot of plays, and that was only in 50% of the touches pretty much in that backfield with David Montgomery. So I think even with Ben Johnson gone, this line offense, they're going to operate the same exact way, and it's going to be a 50-50 split once again with Gibbs and Montgomery. But we saw last season, Gibbs, he don't need a monster workload, obviously, to be one of the best running backs in fantasy football. Number 4, Christian McCaffrey. McCaffrey's got the most upside possibly of any of these runners. Obviously, injuries have done him in over his career, especially last season where he was the number 1 pick overall. But CMC, if he's healthy, there's an argument he could be the best running back once again this season in fantasy football. So right now, he's been practicing in training camp. He's been healthy, and he's been healthy since January. So if they were in the playoffs, San Francisco, he would have made those games, supposedly, was McCaffrey. He got stem cells, trying to keep his longevity with the stem cells and heal. And we've seen a lot of players starting to go that. So I think CMC bounces back this year. And if he's healthy, like I said, he could be the best running back this year. But health has been a big issue for him throughout his NFL career. Number 5, Genty, big-time prospect, one of the better prospects to come out in the last few seasons besides Bijan Robinson is Genty. The only thing I want to see out of him, obviously, is catching the football out of the backfield, and reports coming out of training camp that he's working Genty, obviously, in the receiving game and catching the football. So this offense is revamped from last year. They added Geno Smith. They got Brock Bowers. Got Jacoby Myers coming back from last season as well. And Genty, he's going to be a workhorse. Wouldn't be surprising if he gets 275 carries to 300. And he's going to get a lot of work and the young legs, obviously, and motivation by Genty. I think he could be easily a top 5 running back this season. Number 6, Devon Achane, a great season last year was for him with the Miami Dolphins. He had a big year receiving the football. And if Tua didn't get hurt, he could have been the number 1, arguably, running back was Devon Achane. There was a few low weeks, obviously, when Tua was out of the lineup. But like I said, he could do it all. He's shown he could be a 3-down running back, even though he's one of the smaller backs in the league, is Devon Achane. And I just like his home run ability and his upside. Number 7, Derrick Henry. I know he's been a monster, especially last season in his first year with the Baltimore Ravens. But one point and another, Father Time's going to catch up, in my opinion, with Derrick Henry. It could be this year. I thought it would be last year, but obviously with that Raven team that led the league in rushing with him and Lamar Jackson, he just put up monster numbers, obviously. The only thing with him, obviously, you don't catch the football out of the backfield. And I think he's going to get a little more rest as the year goes on, and I keep him a little bit fresher for the playoffs. But you can't go wrong. A lot of these running backs, obviously, they're close in tail, but I just like the upside more of a guy like Genty and Achane over Henry. But if you took Henry over him, I wouldn't push back much. Number 8, Jonathan Taylor. Taylor last year got off to a slow start in the beginning of the year, but he was a league-winning running back if you made the playoffs and had Taylor on your roster with some monster games down the stretch. At the quarterback position, it's a battle between Richardson and Daniel Jones for the starting quarterback gig. But Jonathan Taylor, there's no competition over there. We know injuries have been concerns for him throughout his career as well. But I think Taylor, solid mid-second round pick for fantasy owners, could go out there and help you either as your number 1 back, or if you get a running back in the first round and take him in the second, he's been consistent for the most part. Number 9, Bucky Irvin. Last year, a big year it was for Bucky Irvin in his rookie season with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Rachaad White was the starter going into the year, but Bucky showed, even as he's a smaller running back, he could run in between the tackles. He could go out there, catch the football out of the backfield and make plays. And coming into this season, I like Bucky Irving as a top 10 option at the running back position once again. Number 10, Kyren Williams. I know some people are down on Kyren. He's had injury problems, and he's a smaller back as well. But now signing that 3-year, $33 million extension, it just gives me more confidence to take Kyren Williams, and knowing he's not going to lose some work to Blake Corum, and he's going to get a lot of touches to get $11 million a year, especially nowadays with the committees in the backfields and the climb in the running back position. They have a lot of confidence in Sean McVay and the Rams, and that's why obviously I got Kyren Williams still as a top 10 back, where you see other sites and other people's opinions, they don't have him in the top 10. Number 11, Chase Brown of the Cincinnati Bengals. Chase Brown last year was a nice breakout season for Brown, especially once Zach Moss went out with injury. There was no competition in the backfield. And, the Cincinnati offense, they're going to put up a lot of points. One of the more high-powered, if not the high-powered offense in all pro football. We saw a lot of high-scoring games with them last season. And Chase Brown, one of the better receiving backs out of the backfield. So if you took Brown anywhere from that 9 to 11 range in the running back position, I wouldn't fault you, because it's pretty close with him, Kyren, and Bucky Irving, in my opinion. But I prefer the other guys just a little bit more, because in between the tackles, I have more confidence in them. Number 12, Josh Jacobs of the Packers. Last year, pretty good year for Jacobs with the Packers. But the only thing with him, the workload wasn't as big as you thought it would be. They had some guys back up over there last season take some work. And now Marshawn Lloyd, who they drafted last season with a decent draft pick, was the Green Bay Packers. I think he could get 7 to 10 touches per game. And we know Jacobs isn't much of a receiver out of the backfield, but I still think he's a top 12 back this year. 13, Breece Hall of the New York Jets. Breece Hall, he's one of my better value picks this season, where he's going in that 3rd, 4th round range in most fantasy drafts, where last season he was a top 5 pick in most leagues. So this Jet team, they don't have a lot of weapons on offense. They got Garrett Wilson, you got Justin Fields, who's obviously a big playmaker with his legs as well. But Breece Hall, one of the better receiving backs out of the backfield. And like I said, he's playing for a contract as well. So I think he could go out there, have another nice season. 14, Omarion Hampton of Los Angeles Chargers. I'm big on Hampton coming into the season. Najee Harris being on the sidelines, obviously in training camp, helps Hampton get workloads or get a lot of practice under his belt, and obviously get time with the first team unit. So Hampton, they used a 1st round pick on him, is this Los Angeles Charger team. And Harris, healthy or not, he's going to get his touches and he's going to get his work as Hampton. And I like the explosiveness, and right now I'm going to play it safe and have him 14, but it wouldn't be surprising to me if he could be a top 10 back this year. 15, James Cook of the Buffalo Bills. Cook, his ceiling is a little bit lower in my opinion. Obviously, when you got a quarterback like Josh Allen, who takes off and runs the football a lot, has a cannon of an arm driving the football down the field, Cook, his ceiling's going to be capped, even though last season a monster year with the touchdowns was James Cook. But like I said, if he's not scoring those touchdowns, a lot of off games it was for him. But still, I think is a solid number 2 running back for fantasy owners. You could count on Cook, but I don't expect them to get 15-plus touchdowns once again this season. 16, Kenneth Walker of the Seattle Seahawks. Another good value pick in that 3rd, 4th round range is Kenneth Walker. I know Zach Charbonnet is there, but Kenneth Walker, once he came back from injury last year, Charbonnet wasn't a factor, even though he had big games filling in for Walker. So this offense has changed up. I mentioned in other videos, they got Cooper Kupp in the receiving room. JSN, the number 1 receiver. Metcalf traded off, and at quarterback, Sam Darnold. But I think Kenneth Walker, he's a 3-down back who could do it all, and he's a solid, especially if you have him as your number 2 back on your roster going into the year. 17, Chuba Hubbard of the Carolina Panthers. So last season, he had a big year, Chuba Hubbard, where Jonathan Brooks, they were hoping, would take the reins, but another torn ACL, he's out for the season. I know they signed Rico Dotto and drafted Etienne's brother in the NFL draft this season, but Chuba Hubbard got the contract extension. He's a 3-down back. He fits his Panther team pretty well, and he's just going to go out there and give you consistent numbers. 18, Alvin Kamara of the New Orleans Saints. Alvin Kamara in the latter part of his prime now is Alvin Kamara, but still I think one of the better receiving backs in the league is Kamara. There's not much going on in this offense in New Orleans, especially with Derek Carr retiring. I think he's going to get force-fed and line up as a receiver at times as well as Kamara. Pretty much this offense right now is Chris Olave, Kamara, and Rashid Shaheed is the top option. So just on volume alone, I think Kamara still carves out the top 20 finish this year. 19, David Montgomery of the Detroit Lions. I know a lot of people, they're down on David Montgomery. They think Gibbs obviously is going to step right in and they're going to forget about Montgomery, but he's still going to get 80, 200 touches total, including the receiving game. And we know he's been a big factor at the goal line as well as Montgomery, where last season he found the end zone 12 times. So Montgomery and Gibbs, I still think 50-50 or 55-45. Even in Gibbs' way, he's going to get the workload. They're not going to run Gibbs into the ground, giving him the football 30 times a game. And Montgomery has a nose for the end zone, and he fits this offense perfectly, where I think Gibbs and Montgomery are the best 1-2 combo backfield in all the NFL. 20, Trevion Henderson of the New England Patriots. You want to talk about a burner and a guy out of the backfield who catch the football. That's what Henderson could do. Just the only thing, Ramondre Stevenson's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. He signed a contract extension before last season with Stevenson, and he's going to be more in between the tackles as Stevenson, and Henderson's going to be more of the finesse and the passing downs back out of the backfield like Jahmyr Gibbs. We've seen with the Lions, obviously. So I think Henderson right now, as a top 20 guy coming into the season, is good. Obviously, if Stevenson struggles or he gets hurt, then Henderson steps really into a big role. But right now, I got him in 2021. James Conner of the Arizona Cardinals. Conner, he's been a solid back over the last few seasons. Trey Benson hasn't been a threat to his job. And James Conner, as long as he's healthy, he's a very solid number 2 running back for fantasy owners. And he's going to get his 12, 15 points per game. Physical in between the tackles, decent receiver out of the backfield. And he's in a good offense with Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride as well, where boxes aren't going to be as loaded. And he's going to get good opportunities. 22, RJ Harvey of the Denver Broncos. So this season, a lot of good drafty running backs were in the NFL draft out. And obviously it was headlined by Ashton Genty, Amarian Hampton, then obviously Trevion Henderson, RJ Harvey, Caleb Johnson, who I'm going to talk about. So going into the year, I think J.K. Dobbins is going to be the starter for this Denver Bronco team. They signed him last month right before training camp. And also as well, I think we're going to see Audric Estime possibly get some work. He's a physical back, especially on short yardage. But RJ Harvey, they use good draft capital on him, was this Denver Bronco team. And he's a nice gadget running back out of the backfield to catch the football. So I think as the year goes on, he's going to get better as Harvey. And I'd be comfortable taking him in the 5th, 6th round range. 23, Aaron Jones of the Minnesota Vikings. Aaron Jones, he's on a 1-year deal once again with this Minnesota Viking team. Last year, got off to a hot start. And believe it or not, he was healthy a majority of the season. Only missing a game or 2 was Aaron Jones last season. I know Jordan Mason, they brought him in from the San Francisco 49ers, was this Minnesota Viking team. But I think Jones, he's still going to get his carries, especially early down work. And even if he gets 55% of the share as Jones, I still think it's good enough as a decent number 2 back. 24, Caleb Johnson of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm not as big in Johnson as a rookie coming in as obviously the other guys I mentioned early in the video. But Johnson, he's going to get a workload. Jalen Warren, to me, is not really an in-between the tackle running back, more of a good passing down, third down receiving back. And Caleb Johnson, I think he could crack out a top 24 role this season. And the Steelers offense, a lot of reinforcements, bringing in Rodgers, trading for Metcalf, trading Pickens away to Dallas. And they still need another guy to step up in the receiving game as a number 2 receiver, but also bringing in Jonnu Smith and having Pat Freiermuth. That's a nice 1-2 combo at the tight end position. So I think the running lanes will be there for Johnson, and he could have a decent rookie season. 25, DeAndre Swift of the Chicago Bears. So the Bears, they didn't bring anyone in free agency or through the draft. Roschon Johnson is the backup, and Swift, believe it or not, every year, even if you think his stock's been going down and he's been struggling of late, always finishes as a top 24 running back. But this season, I think this Bear team, they're going to throw the football a whole lot with even more weapons they brought in this offseason. Obviously, the impressive rookie tight end Loveland, they drafted him with a top 10 pick. And then also as well, Luther Burden, he could be a nice play for this Bear team down the line to go with DJ Moore and Rome Odunze. So I think Swift, he'll be hovering around that top 24. Once again, 26, Tony Pollard of the Tennessee Titans. Last year was a decent first year in Tennessee with Pollard, but towards the end of the year, Tajay Spears was healthier and he ate into the workload a little bit. But I think Tony Pollard, he could go out there, he can make plays. This offense is a little bit improved, in my opinion, with Cam Ward, the quarterback, compared to Will Levis or whoever else they were trying out there. Mason Rudolph at times was Tennessee. And Tony Pollard, he's a solid number 2 back. 5th, 6th round range, he's going in a lot of these drafts. And like I said, if I had to go into a year where he's my number 2 back and I load up at other positions, I think it's decent. 27, Isaiah Pacheco of the Kansas City Chiefs. So a contract season it is for Pacheco. And there's a lot of backs in that backfield over there. Elijah Mitchell, they signed, even though he hasn't been healthy the last 2 seasons. Signed Kareem Hunt, who was solid last year, filling in for Pacheco. And I don't think the ceiling's that high for Pacheco. Coming into the year, I was a little bit more in on Pacheco, but now as things are panning out and other guys are emerging with other teams here coming out of training camp, Pacheco's dropped down on the list. 28, another running back that's dropped down, Joe Mixon of the Houston Texans. Unfortunately, he's been banged up, and now the latest reports are he might not even be ready for week 1. I know they got Nick Chubb there, even though he's got no burst, according to beat writers in training camp with this Houston Texan team. And also Damian Pierce still on the roster as well, where a few years ago he was a solid back for this Texan team. So Joe Mixon, hopefully he's ready for the opener, but he's up there in age. And injuries last year kept him out 3-4 games. And now ready going into training camp and preseason, he's banged up, so he's down on the list. 29, Brian Robinson of the Washington Commanders. Him and Austin Eckler, a nice 1-2 combo. Robinson had some big games last year, and he could do a little bit of everything. A physical back in between the tackles, catch the football a little bit out of the backfield as well as Brian Robinson. But this is more the Jaden Daniels show, and now adding Deebo Samuel, who also could carry the football out of the backfield a little bit as well. I think Robinson, his ceiling isn't that high, but as someone as a bench piece or maybe a flex option, I think he could be good for owners. 30, Jordan Mason of the Minnesota Vikings. Like I said early in the video, they brought Mason in from San Francisco and gave him a decent contract as well. So Jordan Mason last year, he was one of the better backs in the early part of the year, filling in for CMC. Then he got banged up with injuries, and teams caught on to him a little bit. But like I said, I think he's going to have a say in this backfield, this Jordan Mason, and he's going to get possibly 40, maybe even 45% of the touches with Aaron Jones, because we know Jones is up there in age and he's been injury prone. 31, Tyrone Tracy of the New York Giants. I thought Tracy last year, he had a decent year in his rookie season with the Giants. The thing that did him in at times was fumbling the football in crucial parts of the game in the fourth quarter. But him and Scatterbo could be a 50-50 split. Giants are big on Scatterbo, but I think Tracy, he showed what he could do last season. Some big ball games. He had good receiver out of the backfield. And early on in the year, I think Tracy's going to get more of the work than Scatterbo. 32, J.K. Dobbins of the Denver Broncos. Obviously, at R.J. Harvey higher on this ranking list than Dobbins. But Dobbins always finds a way each year to get some work. But injuries every season, right on cue, he's going to go down with an injury, is J.K. Dobbins. But still, as a back-end running back to draft in 9th, 10th round range, I think he's solid, is J.K. Dobbins. So like I said, I think he starts the year as the starter, but as the year goes on, I think R.J. Harvey's going to step into a bigger role. 33, Jalen Warren of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Before the draft, it looked like he was going to be the only back over there, but obviously Caleb Johnson they took, but Warren's still one of the better receiving backs in the league. The only thing last season, he was in and out of the lineup with a hamstring injury. But this Steelers team, their offense, I think, has improved with Rodgers and adding DK Metcalf and Johnson to it. But Warren, he's still going to get the work, possibly 40-45% of the work, especially on third downs. But like I said, I don't think the ceiling's that high. 34, Cam Scatterbo of the New York Giants. So a lot of pop and buzz about him coming out in training camp at Scatterbo. But I just think Tyrone Tracy in the early going is going to be the man over there. And we got to see what Scatterbo could do in game action. So right now, he's a back-end 4th, 5th running back on your roster. I'd be good with Scatterbo there, but if you're trying, obviously, to count on him as a starter, I just don't see it. Especially Tracy is only in his second year, and he's going to get a good opportunity to take this job. 35, Ramondre Stevenson of the New England Patriots. So Stevenson last year, he got the contract extension. He didn't have a good season last year. Now with Trevion Henderson drafted, I don't think the ceiling's high for Stevenson, but he's still going to have a say in this backfield where he's going to get, I think, at least 50% of the touches. We know Henderson, he's a great receiver out of the backfield. They use good draft capital on him, obviously, was this New England Patriot team. But Stevenson still short yardage and goal line, and even at 50% of the touches is a decent backup. 36, Zach Charbonnet of the Seahawks. If Charbonnet was on, let's say, 10, 15 other teams, he easily could be a starter. We saw him last year fill in for Kenneth Walker, and he had a monster few game stretch when Walker was out, is Charbonnet, especially down the stretch. So he's a physical back. has good receiving prowess out of the backfield. But like I said, this is Kenneth Walker's backfield right now. But Charbonnet, one of the better handcuffs, no doubt about it, in fantasy football. 37, Tajay Spears of the Tennessee Titans. I mentioned earlier, him and Tony Pollard, it could be 50-50 split over there. Obviously, Spears, he missed the majority of the season in and out of the lineup with injuries last year. But he's not a physical runner. A small back, scat back, catch the football out of the backfield. And I think in PPR leagues, he could be decent. 38, Travis Etienne of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So with Tank Bigsby and Bashal Tootin there as well for this Jaguar team. It could be a three-man committee for all we know, but Etienne, I still think, has the highest ceiling. Good receiver out of the backfield. In between the tackles, not as good as Tank Bigsby, but he's got that home run hitting ability. And 2 years ago, Etienne, I thought he was going to catapult to one of the better running backs in fantasy football, but the touches went down, injuries played in, and the league caught on to him a little bit. 39, Javonte Williams of the Dallas Cowboys. This Cowboy backfield, another three-man committee possibly with Williams, Miles Sanders they signed, and the rookie Jaden Blue, and even Deuce Vaughn still on this roster as well, even though he hasn't factored in with this Cowboy team the last couple seasons. So Javonte, they signed him in free agency. Obviously in the draft, one of these running backs weren't there for Dallas where they were hoping to get Chinty. And Javonte, it's now 2 years off the ACL. Maybe he turns some heads in surprise, but I just don't see a high ceiling, especially in an offense where this Cowboy team could be trailing a lot and having to pass. And when you have guys like CeeDee Lamb and Pickens, they're going to get a lot of yards and opportunities. And I don't think the running game will be that great. And 40 to close it out, Jerome Ford of the Cleveland Browns. So I know Jukins, he's got off the field issues. We don't know if he's going to play much this season. They got the youngster Sampson as well. But Jerome Ford, anytime they're in a pinch with injuries to Nick Chubb over the last couple seasons or whatever the case may be, Ford stepped in and he's been a solid backup or flex option for fantasy owners. I think going into the year, he's going to be the starter as Jerome Ford for this Cleveland Brown team. And like I said, he's had some good games, no doubt about it, over the last couple seasons. And right now, I think as opening day approaches, he's going to be the early down back with Sampson coming in on passing down. So that's the top 40 running backs I'm ranking entering the 2025 season.